Good morning. It's March 25th, 2022. Welcome to Triggered. It's Friday, and I'm Cory Morgan. If it's your first time here, just letting you know, show is the Western Standards live daily show covering news items, talking interesting guests, and giving me a platform to vent and go on so that I don't have to keep bothering everybody else around me with it. Starts 11:30 a.m. every day. Thanks to all of you who are coming in, who are live and commenting. We like to see that interaction. That's the whole point of doing this live. Being able to get back and forth, have some debate with each other, send some questions my way, questions to the guests. We won't necessarily address them all, but we get as many as we possibly can in there. Hey, Beverly and Carrie Ann and Red Deer. Now, we got a big special day coming tomorrow. For those who aren't familiar with it, it will be Earth Day. So be sure to make sure to put off all your laundry, your dishes, plugging in your car, all of that until about 8:30 tomorrow night. Let's see if we can break a record. Calgary did that before for Earth Day. They set off this whole big thing, this virtue signaling exercise, and we actually managed to have our energy usage go up that day. I was so proud. Celebration of human ingenuity and progress and technology. Hey there, Sandy and Tracy, Gary. Wow, we got a whole bunch. Carla and Salmon Arm. Anna Marie Meyer. Another thing, let's see, has anybody got a birthday going on this weekend? I like seeing that interaction, see what's going on. We see where everybody's coming out of. Anybody celebrating, surviving another year on this fine earth? There are no gifts that come from the Western Standard, just the gift of my acknowledgement in hopes that you live for another year and continue to view our advertisers so we can pay our bills. But if you got one coming up this weekend or going, hey, shout it out there. Let's get these comments going and let's talk about some celebratory things sometimes. Now, I got a couple of good guests coming in today. I got Western Standard's new Saskatchewan reporter, Christopher Oldcorn, and he's a very experienced journalist. He's been at it at a number of venues for quite a while already, and it's great to have him on out in Saskatchewan because we just haven't been covering Saskatchewan as much as we really wanted to and should, and now we are, and boy, he's putting this stuff out. So that's great. We're going to have a talk with him and introduce him to you all, because as we can see from those commenters, even Terry giving a legal land description, people are all over the place. We've got a lot of people out in Saskatchewan. As well, we're going to have Edmonton journalist Tom Braid come on, and he's got an initiative to push back against cancel culture, and that'll be pretty interesting. It's something that actually not just somebody going on about cancel culture. He's got an idea of actually putting together, I guess, an organization to strike back at the mobs, and it's going to be an interesting talk to see what he's got going on there. Of course, now I got to get on with the negative and get on with what's got me worked up for the day. And it's the UCP. They've done it again. So I got a message, on the social media battles we've been having lately. And this is for the apologists for the UCP executive as they move to rig the leadership review. Don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. Common statement, and it works. It's insulting enough to UCP members and Albertans in general that the party in power is currently and flagrantly trying to rig their own leadership review process in order to protect Kenny's leadership. It's a complete insult to our intelligence, as they try to claim the move was to completely change the process was in order to better accommodate the members. Come on, you guys. We don't better than that. We can see through this. The people who are now calling a mail-in balloting system the only democratic way to do a leadership review are the exact same people who said such a system would be undemocratic and could be prone to abuse and corruption. This isn't a simple flip-flop. It's bald-faced lying, and they're fooling nobody. Just at least be upfront with us. The Premier and his dwindling number of supporters are outright desperate, and they're in total panic. Their effort to create a leadership review system so expensive and awkward to participate in that it would limit the participants to a small number of people that they felt they could control backfired completely. They underestimated the ire among party members with Kenny's leadership, as nearly 15,000 people shelled out $100 each to take part in the review 2 weeks from now. Political parties live and breathe on internal polls. You know damn well they've been polling and questioning members like mad, and with only weeks remaining until the review, they concluded that Kenny was going to lose this thing. They knew it. The only solution they could find was to strong-arm the party executive and get the process kicked down the road by another month and some. This move is likely going to backfire as well, as the members are now more inflamed and more mistrustful of the party leadership than ever. But they bought themselves some breathing space in order to try and come up with some sort of plan to win the review. There was no need to go to a mail-in ballot, and they're lying and claiming it was the only option. The UCP raised $1.5 million from registrants. With that kind of money, and weeks to work with, they could have easily set up balloting stations around the province to accommodate the large number of voters. That wouldn't have bought them the time they needed, though, and that they knew they were losing. They need that extra month. Now, upwards of apparently 40,000 UCP members may be eligible to vote in the review. That doesn't assure Kenny's survival of this review by any means, but it changes the pool of electors, and they're so desperate they felt they had nothing to lose. So let's just shake up the system and hope we can change the outcome. Recently leaked audio of meetings that Kenny held with staffers exposes the premier as labeling his opponents as racists and extremists. He sounds just like Justin Trudeau, and he has gravely insulted a large segment of the party membership, if not the majority of it. It's a tired trope, and UCP members didn't sign up to take part in that crap. That Kenny can't even hold a private meeting without it being recorded and leaked demonstrates the respect he's commanding, even within the upper echelons of his own party. Kenny is needed to try and use staffers on unpaid leave to campaign on his behalf, and that's because his introverted style of government management has left him with no grassroots basis of supporters anymore. No volunteers or ground workers. He took his position for granted, and now has little to no human resources to tap into to try and win this review. Trust has been shattered within the UCP. Legal action on behalf of members is in the works now. Dozens of constituency association presidents are calling for Kenny's resignation, and the number of MLAs in open revolt against the premier appears to be growing by the day. If there's going to be any slim hope of Kenny retaining his leadership, it's going to have to be done in demonstrating his ability to lead rather than playing political games. He's losing the games. The window of opportunity for that sort of display is likely long closed, though. The bridges have been burned. Albertans and UCP members are repulsed with the party, and it's showing in polls outside of the party and with the discord within it. Even if Kenny somehow manages to cling to the leadership until mid-May, and even if he somehow garners over 50% of the votes, the party is irreparably damaged. There's going to be a mass floor crossing, as too many MLAs have passed the point of no return already, as they've been calling for the resignation of Kenny or openly opposing him. Constituency associations are going to dissolve, and we're going to have multiple conservative parties in the legislature again. Rachel Notley, in the meantime, is smiling like a Cheshire cat. The only way the UCP will manage to win the general election slated to be held a year from now is to demonstrate that they have dramatically changed and reformed themselves. And this has to start at the top. Kenny's proven himself to be willing to drag the party into electoral oblivion rather than allowing a fair, open leadership review to be held by the very damn rules his supporters set in the first place. If Kenny really thinks he can pull it off, he has no other option now but to resign and run for the leadership again. If he really has the chops to win a general election, he has to show that he can win against the contenders within his own party. The role as premier was Kenny's to lose. Conservative parties in Alberta usually are elected to multi-decade dynasties. In 3 years in power, Kenny has managed to lead the UCP into a position where they could potentially lose power after one term, and that's even without a big vote split going on. He has to be held accountable for this. Had he even implemented simple promises such as recall, which still hasn't been proclaimed, of course, they're scared of it, or followed through on the Fair Deal panel, perhaps, but he didn't do any of that, maybe some of his original supporters would still be behind him. Unfortunately, he's done nothing but dodge and disappoint. It's only going to get uglier with each day that Kenny desperately tries to retain his role as leader. It won't make it easier if his supporters keep trying to feed us BS about the process while they're at it. They're killing what little amount of credibility and trust remains out there for that party. And it's just going to get worse. That's what's got me triggered today. And it's got a lot of people triggered today. I mean, that process has just been beyond the pale so far. Let's get in and see what we've got going on the news here. So today we have our reporter, Eva Sudyk, coming in to talk to us about what's going on. Because, yes, the stories are just piling up out there. Hey, Eva, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Cory?
Very good. Very good. So what has been breaking in the news today before we get on to what's coming in the future here?
We have an update on Canadian oil. Natural Resource Minister said we will increase crude oil exports by 300,000 barrels a day to turn the world markets further off of Russian oil. But like you said, Earth Day is tomorrow, and the Natural Resource Minister is concerned about the environment. He wanted to assure people that this will only replace Russian gas consumption and not increase it on a global scale. What are your plans, Cory, for Earth Day tomorrow? I overheard you and Dave talking about it.
Yeah, as I said, I've got a lot of domestic plans in mind, things I don't typically do, as Jane can attest to. I'm going to do a whole pile of, well, actually, she won't do my laundry for me either, but I'm doing all my laundry tomorrow night at 8:30. I'm going to make sure that dishwasher's full and loaded. Maybe I'll plug in the car and even turn up the heat in the chicken coop just to make sure we're fully utilizing all those fantastic developments we have as a species with all that power and modern amenities.
I've never heard that before. When I grew up being taught in school about Earth Day, that's not what they told me to do.
Oh, well, you had the wrong teachers, but you're growing.
For oil imports, Pierre Polivier said he wants to double Newfoundland's oil production and build pipelines across Canada, part of his new Conservative campaign. We have an article up explaining Polivier blasting Trudeau, and he tells us Canada imported 73,000 barrels from Saudi Arabia in 2020. Seems that Trudeau loves oil and gas only if it isn't Canadian.
Yeah, just to cut in, I know we've had a few people have a challenge with that one. It's spelled so counterintuitively. I have to do it, though. It's Polyev.
Polyev.
The best way to do it is just not to think about how his name's spelled and then say it. I know for us English speakers, it can be challenging, but he might end up as our prime minister. We're going to have to get better at pronouncing it. I know you always spell it right, and that's what makes it harder to pronounce, but I just had to interject there.
Polyev, yeah, I got to keep that in mind when I'm calling him and trying to get him on our, my articles and whatnot. Okay, good tip.
No problem.
Trudeau also and the finance minister, they had approved a grant of over $43 million to the We charity, and now this is back as a conflict of interest case resurfaced this week. You can read more about that on the site. The Parliamentary Budget Office report was released. The analysis for the Canadian carbon tax said Canadian households could see losses in the thousands by year 2030 if the tax continues. And we have comments from Environmental Minister Stephen Guilbeault on that one. Did I say that name right?
Things. That's right. I call them all sorts of other stuff, but it doesn't look anything like the spelling. But no, your pronunciation sounded just fine there, yes.
I'm used to just saying uneven Stephen, and that's it.
Yes,
so.
that works well.
There's updates on those involved in the Freedom Convoy. Tamara Litch and Chris Barber were grouped together in a court case yesterday. Now they're jointly accused of 10 charges. A follow-up story just came out. Litch wants her bail conditions changed on the premise that they violate her charter rights. I'm really wondering if this appeal will do anything, since the whole Freedom Convoy was on the basis of it violates charter rights, and we know how that went over. Many Canadians are still upset about that, including myself. So I'm really wondering what's going to happen with that.
Yeah, that's in the air. The lawyers have certainly got their work cut out for them in the weeks and I think months to come since that convoy. And as we see all these parliamentary committees and Senate committees reviewing things, it's not looking very good for the people who wanted to crack down on the convoy. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I hope so. And then in upcoming news, the Tories are outraged that Trudeau and Singh are continuing the COVID mandates federally. Melanie has a story on that. It'll be coming out later. And this afternoon, Kenny will be speaking for the first time since the UCP leadership scandal. That's at 3 o'clock, and Dave will be all over it.
Right on. Well, lots going on, lots covering. Yeah, so that news conference, it's going to be interesting. Often if you see a Friday afternoon conference, particularly if it's before a long weekend, it means they're trying to take out the trash. They're going to drop something they don't want to address. So chances are, who knows? He might say a whole lot of nothing. There's a whole lot of crazy going on right now. But I find news conferences just before Friday at close of news days is usually where you're going to get some of your most interesting nuggets of news coming out of those guys, because they're hoping people forget about it over the weekend.
Yeah, they always leave it till last minute and keep Dave in the office all afternoon. It's really unfair.
Yeah, we know Kenny's never been on time for one of his news conferences yet, so it'll probably be a little after 3 yet, folks, for those who are watching. But thank you very much for the update then, Eva, and we'll see you later on.
Yeah, see you later. Thanks.
Great, thanks. But yes, as I said, lots breaking, busy news times. I guess if anything we can thank our crazy politicians and governments for is they give us no end to things to rant and report on. It's not hard to find things to cover. It's just hard to keep up with everything as fast as it breaks. And sometimes people have a difficulty even believing it might be real. Just, Frank Boucher there. Hey, Frankie, watching the EU members roasting our potato. Yeah, Justin Trudeau on his Euro tour has not been resonating well. It's been just a catastrophe over there as he addressed that empty room. But doing us proud on the international stage as usual. Another story that's been sliding under the radar, and this is part of what gets me a little, again, upset with the UCP as they're busy like a bunch of, hornets all ripping at each other and tearing their own party to shreds, is there's some big government stories sliding under the radar that they probably should be on top of. And one of which is that Thomas Dang thing. This is bizarre, and it really should be making a lot bigger news. I mean, those who are familiar with it, Thomas Dang was an NDP MLA. Last December, all of a sudden, out of the blue, the RCMP raided his house. It was the Cyber Crimes Division. They haven't laid charges yet, but there's an investigation on the go. And so far, Dang appears to have admitted that he had tried to hack Jason Kenney's personal healthcare account, and that in using some of the information, he actually managed to get into somebody else's healthcare account and get some personal information about their vaccination status. I've said it before, it's pure speculation, but I mean, he was claiming, he just wanted to expose holes in the security of the government's website and so on, which is a load of crap. We know that's a load of crap. Dude, that's not your job. It's not for you to go in there and do that. As like saying, I just went in to rob that bank just to see if their security was okay. Honest, I was going to give the money back later. Yeah, right. So he got caught. But now news is surfacing, it sounds like from an email, that he was in communications with Notley about some of the information he'd found as early as September. Now, Rachel Notley's claiming she knew absolutely nothing about Dang's attempts to hack the private medical information of elected officials in Alberta. And I'm still surprised he hasn't been charged with something yet, but the investigation is ongoing. We'll see what that, because that is very, very serious. But did Notley know? And as some UCP MLAs are asking, unfortunately, it's getting lost within their own infighting right now, but they are rightly asking, what did you know, Mrs. Notley? When did you know it? In September, we knew you had some knowledge. Did you have knowledge of what was going on, where this information was coming from? I'm sure she'll probably deny it, but emails get leaked. That's how we found this much. You said you knew absolutely nothing about it in December when you suddenly removed him from caucus after the RCMP raided his house. Yet it sounds like you knew a little bit about this months before that. Were you just waiting maybe to see if he really would hit the jackpot and find 4 or 5 UCP MLAs who hadn't been vaccinated? Because we know that's what he was probably looking for. Violating people's personal, private healthcare records and rights. This man should not be sitting in our legislature at all right now as it is, even if Notley is faultless and has nothing to do with it. It's an embarrassment that a person would do something like that and still sits as an elected representative. Though, to be fair, he hasn't been charged or convicted of anything. The only person at this point who can kick him out of the legislature is himself if he chose to resign. If he had any sort of principles, I think at this point he would, but I guess maybe he needs the job because he's obviously a pretty crappy hacker. So that's where that sits with Mr. Dang. And I see Chris Oldcorn in the lobby. I'm going to speak to our sponsor quickly first, though, and that is Bitcoin Well. These guys have been a great sponsor for us. They are our first sponsor, actually, at the Western Standard quite a while back, or at least our first real major one, and they've been really good with us. And part of it, they provide a really good service. These guys are awesome. If you're looking at getting into digital currencies, if you want to check it out, go to bitcoinwell.com. And these guys, their whole goal, as you can see with Bitcoin Academy, is to walk you through the process. If that's your sort of thing, they will inform you what digital currencies are about, how you can get into it, how you can set up your wallet, all sorts of services. I mean, you can pay your utility bills online with Bitcoin. You can use the ATMs all throughout the West. These guys have all kinds of services. Maybe it's not for you, but the best thing to do is go in and inform yourself and see if it's your thing. They're a Western Canadian company. You can deal with real people live one-on-one and find out if their services are right for you and if getting into digital currency and Bitcoin is right for you. I'm doing it myself, and so far I have been satisfied with it. I'm hardly rich on a big stack of Bitcoins or anything, but I got that little bit squirreled away now that perhaps will turn into something better for me down in the future. Okay, so let us get our Saskatchewan person, Chris Oldcorn, in here and have a discussion this morning. We'll pop him into the studio there in a second. There we go. Hello, how you doing?
I'm great, Cory. How are you doing?
Good. I've been looking forward to this. You came on and as I was saying, almost in an apologetic way to our readers, but we have not, we've been reporting from Saskatchewan. We got some stuff from out there. We always have, but I think we've woefully neglected the news out there just didn't have quite enough resources. Now we're growing. We have you out there, and boy, you've been putting out a lot of great content so far. So I'm just happy to announce to our Saskatchewan followers that we'll be treating them better with their local news now.
Yeah, well, one of the great parts of actually starting this week was the fact that the provincial budget was this week on Wednesday. So as a reporter, that's a great week to start because you get all kinds of different stuff that comes out of it, because you got major spending like healthcare, education, not to mention, you've got some other things that they are doing in terms of trying to reduce wait times. There's some childcare stuff in there. So there's all kinds of stuff going on right now in the budget, as well as some other things going on around the province as well. Later today, I will be with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation at the legislature with their national debt clock, which is actually making a tour through Saskatchewan today. And actually earlier today, it was in Saskatoon, and right now it is traveling to the legislature here in Regina. So I've had a very fun first week. There's been plenty to talk about and be able to make connections, and I've actually found that the politicians here are actually very willing to talk, because there's just not that many reporters here to begin with, and the access is actually pretty good. And I would have to say in my first week, I mean, even the NDP has been extremely, quick at responding to anything I request, even from them, which, you were just talking about the NDP MPP in Alberta doing some interesting crappy hacking jobs. But here in Saskatchewan, there is just the Saskatchewan Party and the NDP as well, kind of similar to what you see in Alberta with the UCP and the NDP. But the Saskatchewan Party here has been in for quite some time. And Premier Moe actually is leaving today. He's going over to the UK on a trip to open the Saskatchewan Trade and Investment Office, which I'll have a story on this weekend.
It's interesting. Maybe to kind of roll back to the budget a little bit then. I mean, Saskatchewan's got a similar economy to Alberta's. A lot of, it's resource-based, a lot more agriculture, but there's a lot of oil and gas going on out there as well, and those sorts of resources. So obviously their royalty revenues must have increased coming into this budget as it did in Alberta. But has there been any kind of discussion over here? We actually managed to balance the budget. Is there discussion of reaching a balanced budget in Saskatchewan as well soon?
Good question. Their natural resource revenues are up $1.6 billion over last year. And the interesting thing is they spent it all plus a little more. And they say they're going to balance the budget. And I was talking with Todd McKay at the Tax Federation. And I was talking to him because, I just came from Ontario, and it seems that every provincial government seems to be very good at trying to balance the budget 4 to 5 years from now, but never in the year they're actually in power and actually presenting a budget. They could have balanced this budget. Just to give you a comparison, they had $1.3 billion in natural resource revenues last year and 2.9 this year. I wish my investment portfolio would go up over 100% year over year like that, but they still managed to spend it all and then some. Now, Premier Moe at his press conference after the budget on Wednesday was asked about why there was there's 32 tax and fee increases in this budget and no reductions. And Premier Moe was asked, isn't this a priority to try and balance the budget and reduce taxes? And he said, oh yeah, we want to reduce taxes eventually. Which eventually is what? Is that 2 years from now? Is that 70 years from now? Who knows? So there was plenty in the budget of new things. And the one that is really riling people up is the PST being attached to more stuff. And it's basically being attached to stuff the government said you couldn't do for the last few years and stay in your house. So you want to go to a Riders game? There's now PST on that ticket. You want to get a gym membership?
Blasphemy out there. You can't interfere with the Riders games.
Oh, yeah, no. And try buying a watermelon here on weeks that there is Riders games. And it's not just Riders games. It's gym memberships. You want to go to a craft show. there's PST on it. You want to go curling, there's now PST on it. So basically everything the government forced you not to do for 2 years, they now want you to pay more to go do after they open it up. That is like the riders thing is really, as you mentioned, like that is like literally a religion here in Saskatchewan. And like online, everybody's like, I don't want to have to pay more for a riders game. Why are they taxing the riders? Like, the one reason they're taxing is because they sell out every game, so that's easy money. But the riders aren't happy either because they're like, well, you know, we're going to get people to come back to games this year because we've had a hard time even running games or having people in the stands. And now that they can come back, it's going to cost them more. And that's just the PST is the thing that's really riling them up. However, what they're using that PST money for is additional money to reduce the backlog of surgical wait times right now. So they are taking all the money they're going to make on that and put it towards the surgical wait time reduction. However, they don't have anyone to actually do it, and they started a brand new agency on healthcare workers being recruited to the province, not just here, but they're hiring 300 people from the Philippines to come here to work as nurses and so on as well. So they are trying to address it, but they're not going to be able to get it to pre-COVID wait times until 2025 at the earliest, March 2025. And that's if everything goes perfectly.
And that's, of course,
it never happens.
Waiting on a health list, that's literally could be forever for some of them. Let's hope everybody who really needs treatment. And we're seeing that in every province, in every jurisdiction, everywhere, unfortunately. It's just they got to play catch up from all of the craziness of these years of COVID now. And I mean, that's the thing. Every province, every country is trying to recruit more healthcare staff, and they're all competing with each other. And you can only catch up with so much. But I see on the budget, so they did a lot of record medical spending, but educational organizations don't think they spent enough on them.
No. First off, I'll have to explain the inflation rate here in Saskatchewan. It's actually below the national average. So the inflation rate here was only 4.7%. But the budget for education only went up a little bit more than 1 percentage point. So the educational, like the school board and so on, is viewing that as a cut because they're not even matching inflation. Now, in saying that, they did fully fund the 2% increase from the teachers' collective bargaining agreement. So that 2% increase for all the teachers was included in the budget. So there's not going to be cuts related to the fact that they can't pay enough teachers because the increase was completely fully funded. It's other areas that they may have to cut services. However, they have invested a lot, including, and you have to keep in mind in Saskatchewan that they include childcare in their education budget, and there was an increase there as well. So there's an increased amount of spots available in childcare. But yeah, there is, if you look at it, comparing it to the inflation rate, yes, it's a cut. But at the same time, they really had to prioritize in this budget healthcare, and they did.
Yeah, well, and if health and education, sort of as Carol, one of the commenters, saying, education never thinks they get enough, and there's never enough in health. I mean, those are always the top two issues for people, and we could triple spending, and there would still be room to build another school or bring in another diagnostic machine. It's a difficult area for budgeting, and it'll never quite be enough for some. Turning into a more federal front there, I see you wrote a piece on, it looks like Maxime Bernier is battling the ticket he got while he was protesting in the last election out in Saskatchewan.
Well, the ticket I was specifically talking about there was the election night one, because the People's Party had their election night party in Saskatoon. And that's just one of many, many tickets that he is presently fighting across Canada. But both himself and a couple of the other organizers got tickets from that COVID election night thing because people weren't wearing masks. And the Friday before, the provincial government had put back in the mask wearing requirement. Now, the interesting thing about that is that it was an indoor-outdoor event. So there was no mask requirement for being outdoors. So if you walked in the door and you had the mask in your pocket and then you put it on, the problem being is there was all kinds of coverage of that night that got shot across Canada on TV and people's phones and so on. And the police got tons of complaint calls. Surprise, surprise. So that's one of the tickets that he is presently fighting. Plus, he's also trying to be able to board an airplane again, because he was banned from flying in airplanes as well. And actually, his defense there, I think, is great, because his defense on that is, I'm the leader of a political party that has a higher percentage of the vote than the Green Party does. And we now meet the threshold to be in the debates, because you need to be at 4%. He was at 4% polling in the debates in the last election, and they denied it. Now that it's official with a national election, the next debates, they cannot deny the People's Party of Canada a spot at the podium to debate, because they had 4.7%, clearly making it over that 4% requirement, which, by the way, Max Burian is very excited about. He's very excited to be allowed to compete in a debate where he actually has already more support than the Green Party did, and they still denied him in the last election. And I mean, we saw what the bloodbath was with the Green Party in the last election. I mean, it was a complete destruction of that party.
Oh yeah, I mean, infighting. Speaking of which, and ripping themselves down. I mean, here in Alberta, we're trying to outdo them with the UCP, but they did a heck of a job on their own leader there. Since then, it was something to behold. Yeah. So Bernier, I mean, trying to fill a void as being an alternative. Yeah, I mean, technically, aside from the lack of seats, they can't deny that he has more popular support than the Greens. I mean, that's been established now. But it'll be
it's official. I mean, in the next election, there's no way they can deny him entry into the debates. Period.
Yeah,
because it would actually violate the Election Act. So they can't deny him. Yeah.
If they maintain themselves for that long too as a party, I mean, that's a long time in alternative party months to get to whenever that next election may be as well. But,
look at the weird marriage between the NDP and the Liberals federally.
Yes.
I mean, essentially, in this last election, Trudeau didn't win the popular vote to begin with, and now he's basically made Jagmeet Singh prime minister, because he's going to do whatever Singh wants so he can stay in power until 2025. At which point, who knows if Trudeau's going to step aside and someone else will take over, or he'll run again. But popularity-wise, he's lucky he went to election when he did, because he would have been in serious trouble if he waited another 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, no, he's not doing any better for time passing.
I
mean, Alberta, for the time being, it seems we've kind of settled our masking laws, our vaccine passports, all of that stuff. I mean, it may resurface with another surge in infections and so on, but even the most haywire of health advocates are finally being kind of quiet and accepting that we can live without these restrictions for now. Is that battle kind of finished in Saskatchewan as well, or that you still got some push and pull going on over there?
Interesting question. Saskatchewan was actually the first province to be fully open again in terms of no vaccine passports and masks. When I go to the legislature, there's very few people that are wearing masks here. It's basically just the NDP, and there's only like 12 of them, and a couple of their staffers. A couple of the journalists I saw wearing masks a couple times. None of them were actually wearing them correctly, which was the funny part. They just had over their mouth, but not over their nose. It's like, what do you think that's actually doing? So it's just virtue signaling at this point. But I don't see particularly masking in this province coming back without a fight, because even when you go to the grocery store, I would say at best 1 in 5 people is wearing a mask.
That's good. I mean, a lot of us have been tired of that. We'll see. I mean, again, we know though how quickly a panic government can respond with restrictions if they feel that infections are on the rise again. But hopefully, we're all done with it. It's just good to get an update from what's going on out, on your end of the things as well. We hear a lot about it in Alberta and in BC. I think there's court challenges trying to force it in schools again. We'll see how that goes. Reed has been updating us on that. The short-lived, thankfully, CP rail strike that happened over there.
Yes.
Did that have, I mean, I know it struck a lot of fear in agricultural producers and, of course, the potash industry. I mean, Saskatchewan is the most dependent province in Canada on rail service. Aside from that, though, did the 2-day disruption, hopefully it didn't do too much harm, and they're stable now?
Yeah, no, it was luckily it was extremely short. Actually, 15% of the total workers who were on strike are actually in Saskatchewan, because rail is so important here. So yes, there was a couple days of disruption in terms of not being able to move products, but they are pretty much back to normal now. I was talking to the transportation minister the other day, and they weren't too concerned with regards to how fast it's going to come back. If they would have gone on strike for 3 or 4 weeks, it would have been a big problem. But 2 days at this point, given all the disruptions we've had in supply chains in the last 2 years, a couple day disruptions are not really all that big anymore here, because quite often you have, all these people tested positive for COVID. We got to shut this place down for a week. So the rail strike was actually probably shorter than any of the COVID shutdowns that they had to do.
Yeah, well, that's
and
good.
At this point, they're used to shutdowns.
Yeah, our agricultural producers across Canada have already had a hard enough time. The drought in Alberta was brutal. I think in West Saskatchewan, it's been pretty bad as well. They need a break, and the last thing they need is transportation issues to add to their challenges as things go. So that's good. Just in closing up, I guess then. So what are you working on now, and what do we got to look forward to breaking in Saskatchewan in the next days to come here?
Yeah, I'm going to the Canadian Tax Federation press conference at the legislature this afternoon with the debt clock. I'm also working on a story about the new trade and investment office in the UK. That is, Premier Moe is headed over there with some others right now for promoting Saskatchewan oil and also agricultural products. And they will be there for the next week, and they're actually opening an actual full-time Saskatchewan trade and investment office in London, UK, ironically where I went to journalism school. And they will be going on to Germany after that as well on that tour. And basically, they're promoting the fact that we got stuff here. You don't have to get it from Russia. Let us supply you, which is a good message. I mean, Saskatchewan has $15 billion in natural resource exports every single year. And, the oil price is really good right now in terms of if you're an oil producer and want to make money. It's not good for the average person going to the pumps. But Europe is so dependent that some countries like the UK have said, we're going to keep taking Russian oil because without it, we can't keep our country going. And we saw what happened in the UK not that long ago when they had a problem getting oil into the country, and they couldn't even move food around in trucks because they had no gas to move stuff around with. And they don't want to be in that position again. And Saskatchewan can help solve that problem to make sure that they don't get in a position like that again. And they don't have to keep buying oil from Putin.
Great. Well, it's good to see some initiative coming from our provincial leaders, because we're not going to see any good initiatives coming from the federal front, I think, on our behalf.
I think Premier Moe's trip to Europe is going to be much more successful than Trudeau's has been.
Well, that was a low bar to pass, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a low bar, but Moe won't even have to jump. He'll just be able to walk right over the bar because it's probably buried 6 feet deep right now.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming in to check in. And like I said, I really appreciate that you're out there and looking at all the stuff you're covering and putting in. And our Saskatchewan viewers and readers and listeners are going to be thrilled as we expand our coverage out there in your province. And I look forward to talking to you again soon, Chris.
Thank you very much, Cory. And I'm very looking forward to working with the Western Standard.
Right on.
Have a nice weekend.
You too. Thanks. Yeah, it was Chris Oldcorn, and as I said, he's just kind of got rolling with us recently, and the stories are really coming in already, and it's fantastic. We've tried it. We're a new organization. We're a couple of years old. We're really expanding. It's going great, and we just hadn't gotten a good solid footing in Saskatchewan yet. Though we have a lot of readers and viewers from Saskatchewan, so they're really going to enjoy seeing that expanding more, because it's a province that needs coverage. As does Manitoba, of course. We've got Linda out there doing a lot of stuff and things, but we're just constantly broadening our things as well with our Ottawa office, NBC. We're really spreading around. The Western Standard's doing great. And I should remind everybody as to why we're doing great. It's thanks to you who are subscribing to us, and subscriptions have been fantastic. That's why we're hiring new reporters, opening new locations. It's just been busy as all get out. I'm in this nice roomy studio now as opposed to that little closet Nico and I were stuck in for quite some time. And yes, take out a membership if you haven't already, though, guys. That's how we can stay independent. This is how we don't become beholden to the government for our funding like other media outlets are. And hey, you can save some money. You put in the coupon code TRIGGERED, you get $10 off. And if you take it out for a whole year, it's $99. You're saving a whole pile there, and we need to save these monies. Look at Saskatchewan; they're getting a PST increase. They got to pay more for riders games. You got to save those dollars. Hey, that's a beer, I think, at a football game. So use that triggered code. Get a membership for somebody else. Let your friends in Saskatchewan know, hey, these guys are getting better. They're giving more coverage. Come on, get in and read the Standard, guys. This is your go-to place. You don't have to look at the Star Phoenix anymore. So those who have, as I said, already subscribed, thank you. And if you haven't already, it's well worth it. It's a free trial for a couple of weeks. You can check it out. And hey, if it's not for you, you can cancel. It's risk-free. But 95% of those who sign up for the trial stick with us, and they keep on, and it's a good product. You know, the old days we wouldn't think twice of paying for a newspaper subscription to get the paper delivered to your door every day. And this, you get even more content than a newspaper now. And it's digital. You don't have all those stacked up newspapers to get rid of, and you don't have all those classified ads you never really needed in the first place. So take out a subscription if you haven't already. And there's my Twitter account, Cory B. Morgan. If you really want to get scrapping with me and get some good political discourse, Twitter is my favorite playground. That's where I get going. And there, if you really want to tell me where to go, that's the place to do it, because I'll be more unrestrained in telling you what you can do with yourself. And that's all part of the fun of the discussions and being online. I do want to answer. I see a question from Kathy Tessner came earlier in the comments asking if the folks at the Western Standard support APP. I'm just going to guess. Now, I can't answer for the Western Standard as a whole, of course, or even any individual people, but I'm thinking it's either Alberta Pension Plan or Alberta Provincial Police. In the case of myself, I support both fully. We've seen, and I was talking earlier about Jason Kenney not following through with the Fair Deal Panel report, and a lot of that, you know, they traveled the province, they asked, he played the song and dance, asking us what we want, and they concluded we want those things, and then he just kept kicking the can down the road, and we've seen no progress going towards any of it. And I'll explain a bit of why. Now, there's some people playing the emotions. Oh, we've got to keep our RCMP. We got to, don't step on our RCMP. Okay, guys, they're not going anywhere. They just don't have to be our prime police force. They can stick to federal issues, just like the Americans have the FBI for federal issues. We can have the it was Alberta Prosperity Project. See, there's too many APPs going on out there. Okay, well, I'm still going to talk about those things because, to be honest, I don't know a lot about the Alberta Prosperity Project. Let me write it down so I can learn a little more about it. Because, believe it or not, and I know people have mentioned it to me before with that project, and I've really got to get myself better educated on it. As much as I am a blowhard and I talk at length about a great many things, if I don't know a lot about them in general, I won't address them. So I'm not going to talk about the Alberta Prosperity Project quite yet. I got to look a little more into that. I will dedicate myself. I know a little bit about it, but not enough to speak at length on that. But thanks for that heads up. So since I started on that ramble, then let's talk about some independence things, though, and then such, and Fair Deal Panel. And I promise next week, today I'll have a closer look at the Alberta Prosperity Project, and I'll talk about that next week. And so back to the, where was I there? The police force, yes, an Alberta Provincial Police Force. Look, it's not saying the RCMP are horrible or anything either, but it's an opportunity to create a new force to address some of the problems we got. We got all this idiotic, defund the police movements and stuff like that going on. And it's a shallow, vindictive way to push back at police forces that perhaps are out of date, that perhaps need to change some cultural attitudes within their organizations, that need some better training, that need some better policies. But it's hard to change a giant old institution. And that is what the RCMP is a giant old institution. And it's managed and run by Ottawa. And they aren't going to reflect our values out here. It doesn't mean there's no place for them, but they don't need to have such a large place in our province. And it is large. Now, as we've seen with our provincial government, they can screw up a whole number of things. So they could screw up a provincial force if they put it together as well. You can't not move on an initiative for fear of failing on it, though. We could create a local police force that would be better geared to deal with local issues, particularly in rural areas. RCMP officers are usually transferred from across the country, might not understand. You can't blame them. The dynamics of the circumstances they're in different areas. I mean, rural southern Alberta is nothing like northern Quebec, which is nothing like Newfoundland, which is nothing like northern Alberta or downtown Calgary. And these RCMP officers get dropped into these circumstances and transferred a lot. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to do an effective job. Part of it's being integrated within your community. And I know there's another aspect of why they move them. It's hard to get corrupted police forces if they are moved around all the time too, because they won't develop those relationships and get integrated. But we got to find a balance. But either way, I'm very supportive of an Alberta provincial police force. I think it would be a good development for us. And again, don't take it as an insult to the RCMP. Just look at it as a new development or evolution in local policing. The RCMP aren't gone, but they be designated to more role where it's more appropriate for a federal force. And the officers, once the contract is up, because we just contract the RCMP, we're under no other obligation. Other provinces have their provincial forces. A lot of those officers, if they like it out here, can transfer over, do some new training, and become part of the Alberta Provincial Police. It's not like these members vanish the second we stop using them. So, there's a lot of emotional arguments being made against the moving to an Alberta Provincial Police Force, but I see a lot of rational ones. And yes, I want to see us distance from Ottawa control in every possible way we can, and that's one of the doable ways to do that in advance. The other is the Alberta Provincial Pension Plan. Again, you see, I got all my acronyms wrong for what that APP was, but they're both things that, like I said, those two I know a lot about. With the provincial pension plan that's getting again to taking control of our money. One of the areas is, people worry about equalization, health transfers, and on how a lot of federal spending, with Alberta, we take a net loss year after year after year with that. We put out more than we get back in spending transfers. And we hear about equalization because it's the most blatant, it's the one you see the most easily. But you know what? Pension, we take a beating. We have a terribly bad deal. And it's just demographic. It's not spiteful on the part of Ottawa or anything. But we have a young demographic here who are working and often in a higher income bracket than other parts of Canada. So they put in a disproportionately high amount of money into the CPP, and being younger, they're going to be a lot longer before they collect. So we actually pour, it's another way that we a bunch more pours out into the other part of the country versus what we collect back in it. If we localize that, it would better reflect our own actual population base. The other thing, too, is it gets it out of the hands of Ottawa, and that's what's very important. We got this ideological government. Look at this stuff they do. They'll seize our bank accounts, for crying out loud. They'll do all sorts of things. How much longer do you want to entrust them with your pension, as little as it is? And I'm afraid the CPP doesn't pay off a heck of a lot. It's better than nothing, but it's not that great. And just a second, Wild Rose, could I mention that Wild Rose supports all these things? Yeah, I can. I just did. No, I know the Wild Rose Independence Party does support all of those moves towards independence. As does Maverick, actually, on the federal front. And the UCP pretends to. But we're getting back to the pension. Again, this isn't something that somebody else isn't doing. Quebec has their own pension plan. It's that usual hypocrisy, too. Albertans are labeled and smeared with every possible name and accused of many things whenever we pursue any of those policies that we could do to strengthen our place for ourselves within Confederation. But other provinces do it with impunity. With a local pension plan, we can take that in, and control our own funding. What if Ottawa starts taking those funds from our pension plan and investing them into electric cars? They want a virtue signal with every dollar they can. They shouldn't be investing in anything. Well, aside from just having some blue chip things, have a good investment advisor using that pension fund to properly invest in things to get a return and not worry about their ideological leanings. But we can't trust the federal government not to look at that pot of money and either take it and fire it into general revenues or use it to start investing into virtue signaling projects that really don't serve the person in the end of it who wants to get a return on the money they've worked to earn and put into a pension plan and hope to get a return on down the road. So either way, I am very supportive of an APP on both those fronts. And as I said, with the Prosperity Project, I'm going to have to look more into that to talk further. My next guest should be coming up pretty soon. Let's talk about one of our sponsors here, and that's the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. These guys have been sponsoring us for a long time, too. Speaking of Ottawa, speaking of them infringing on their rights, our rights, getting in our face. Well, the Canadian Shooting Sports Association is there to help stand up for you, stand up for your right and ability to legally, responsibly own and enjoy firearms. Their name says it all. If you Google them, Canadian Shooting Sports Association, you can, they got all sorts of resources. Like any sort of hobby or pastime you have, there's associations where you can get together with other people, share resources, share experiences, and better enjoy whatever you're doing. In this case, there are videos on safe firearm use. There's links to local trade shows to buy and exchange firearms or parts for target shooting, hunting, whatever you want to do with it. And the other and most important part to me, they're pushing back. They got multiple legal challenges against the federal government on behalf of firearm owners because they keep recategorizing firearms and then trying to take them away from you. They're turning you from a law-abiding firearm user into a criminal when they take what used to be a legal hunting rifle and suddenly say it's now assault style. And then they steal it from you. Oh, no, they give you compensation. But you know what? If they take it without giving you a choice, it's stealing. I don't care if they give you money back. So these guys are going to court on it. They're pushing. They got 3 different legal challenges, but they need you, of course. They can't, they don't get their money from nowhere. And the government certainly isn't helping them. So you got to take out a membership with them, guys. Canadian Shooting Sports Association, get on there, take out a membership. You get those resources as a firearm owner anyway. Plus, you're helping them with those legal challenges to make sure that you can continue to enjoy those firearms as is your right. Hey, we don't have our rights unless we stand up for them, I'm afraid. So let's talk about a few more of the news things. Here's some interesting stuff. That was something that Eva talked about earlier. So we've got interest-free loans that we were giving for China. That some of them that run to 2045. This is when we talk about a corrupted government. Now, these went from the 1980s to the early 2000s. So you know what? This is something we can't even blame Trudeau for. Hopefully, I would give credit that maybe it was the Harper government that said, hey, that's enough, and stopped giving the loans to Beijing. But these things were going on for decades. I mean, that went from Mulroney's term through Chrétien's term and into Harper's. And Justin, is incompetent and as inept and as beholden to China as he is, had nothing to do with this. But because they were given 45-year, 50-year loans, it's interest-free and at low interest, they're still outstanding. Think about that. You got to work your butt off, save, get a down payment, get a good credit rating, hopefully get it together and to buy a house and pay down your loan. But the federal government takes your money. That's the things I'm talking about. That's why I don't want them to have any more of our money than they have to. When I'm talking about even pension plans, because they got that pool of money and they're going to use it in ways that don't benefit you. And lending money to China, I can think, is a pretty terrible way to use your money. I mean, they're doing pretty good for themselves, guys. Maybe it was these seed loans helped, but give seed loans to local businesses. No businesses out here are getting interest-free loans like that, or at least most of them aren't, unless you're with the We Charity or something like that. Who knows what kind of connections federally you can get some pretty sweetheart deals for things. But yeah, this is outrageous. And so what was it? There's 168 loans provided to China, and all but 21 were totally interest-free for 40 to 50 years. And others carried interest rates ranging from 1% to 9%. And even if those interest rates sound like, well, maybe it's a little reasonable, you got to remember back when these loans were given, interest rates were a heck of a lot higher than they are now. So this was a gross sweetheart deal. And they're saying they're provided to help ensure Canadian exporters could compete. Oh, enough. So we got to give our customers money to buy our stuff. If that's the case, we don't deserve to compete. That's ridiculous. And that's the stupid game of subsidy wars and going back and forth and screwing yourself with bad policy. Welcome to Canada, right? Unfortunately, bad policy is one of the things we're very good at. So these loans were, let's see, they were put out through Export Development Canada, and they did require cabinet approval. So cabinets back in those days, the Chrétien cabinet, perhaps the early Harper cabinets, Mulroney's cabinets, said, yeah, don't worry about that guy who can't afford his car loan or can't afford to buy a house here in Canada or wants to start a business and get things rolling because he's got a really good idea, or she. Let's just lend that money to China. Well, real long term, give 40, 50, 60 years. No interest. Isn't that nice? Doesn't that feel good? Doesn't it make it good when you pay those taxes coming out of your wallet and see some of these initiatives they're doing for you with your money? Man, yet he gets reelected again and again and again. So I don't know what it takes to get rid of these guys. Actually, again, say that wasn't even Trudeau. I'm just talking about government in general. Let's look at some of the other stuff. Yeah, repeated cabinet claims. And I had a fight with somebody on Twitter about that earlier today. With the usual thing, that myth that carbon taxes are net, revenue neutral or even maybe beneficial. You will get more back from the carbon taxes than you'll put in. When that carbon tax comes in, you'll get so many rebates. You'll happily have more money in your pocket when you're done with it than you did to start with. Well, it's not true. Well, we knew that. It's a bunch of crap. We always knew that. How do we save money being taxed? There's never a way you save money being taxed. There's never anything more stupid, but welcome again to federal policies. Stupid doesn't stop them. Well, look at who runs this country. So they tell you, you give us your money, we'll give you back a piece of it, and it'll make you money. Wow. I trust an Amway salesman more than that. There's a better chance of getting a return. They take off a chunk. It doesn't just go and come back, guys, or increase, no less. Yet that's what they've been selling people. That's what they're claiming. So April 1st, when your price of everything goes up, again, based on a lie, by the way, they lied. They said it wasn't going to go up beyond a certain point on that carbon tax. Catherine McKenna lied. It's going up again. It's going to cost you more on everything. And these guys are trying to tell you it actually is going to put more money in your pocket. So, you know, back to my earlier rant at the start of the show with that good old Western saying, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. That's the same thing. You can sit there and take money out of my wallet and look me in the eye and say, I'm giving you more money than I'm taking. You are not. You are not. And it went before a budgetary office report the other day because Stephen Guilbeault, yes, uneven Stephen as Eva put him, claimed that all but the richest among us are going to be better off paying carbon taxes. And he said most households will see a net loss. Well, this is the reality. This is the budget office, you know, so not crazy Stephen Guilbeault, not that criminal, and he is a criminal. He's been arrested for his extreme environmental activities. He's crazy. And he is in a very strong position in the Trudeau government. Man, the cabinet this guy chooses for himself is just frightening. But either way, so budgetary office, people who actually know numbers, said no, most households are going to see a net loss, and they will run thousands a year for households by 2030. That's what you can afford, extra thousands per year into this, while this government looks you in the eye and says they're saving you money. Welcome to Canada. I'm just happy to see some of these committees are digging into this and exposing some of this crap. It doesn't seem to be changing anything, but at least we're seeing what's going on with it. It's insane what these guys are doing in there and what they're claiming, but it's getting exposed. Keep on the news, keep watching these things. Because, of course, this doesn't make the CBC headline news. This doesn't make CTV's headline news. Hey, by the way, Guilbeault's lying again. No, they just give him more sound bites and let him spread more of his BS. They actually give that guy more time. Self-serving, but I'm going to say, keep coming back to the westernstandardonline.com so you can get these news things. We will report on these things, and we'll expose that crap for the crap that it is. And it most certainly is. Every day they give us a little more to speak on. So it looks like we got our guest there. Tom is ready to roll, I believe. He's in the lobby. And we'll pop him in because I like this initiative that Tom Braid has on the go on pushing back at cancel culture. So, hey there, Tom. How's it going over there?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me. I got an echo. I don't know why, but
okay, well, we just got a little bit of a stall there. It seems to be coming through when you talk. So welcome to the show. I guess you're working through your phone there?
yeah, believe it or not, my rescue cat ran around and unplugged my cable box, and now I lost my cable, my plug-in internet. So I had to switch to the phone. Sorry, I'm late.
That's all right. Actually, Jane and I got two new they're foster dogs we have in our house right now that we brought in, and they're unholy terrors. I tweet regularly with some of the stuff they've managed to pull off at our place, but it's well worth it. So we can still hear you well enough when you're going there, though, Tom. So I just wanted to, and I framed it. You're putting together a whole new organization that's focused on basically pushing back against cancel culture.
That is one of the initiatives for sure. Something I've been working on for months and months, but with recent things that have come up, I've kind of pushed it ahead a couple months. But it's onlineprotectiveservices.com. And there's lots of things to protect yourself for with online activity, with bullying, cancel culture, and woke cancel culture, and right-wing cancel culture. There's a lot of bad stuff where people try and engage the public, and they end up getting attacked. Doesn't seem to matter who you vote for, but there certainly is more left-wing woke attack mobs out there than the conservative ones, as far as I can see.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, I mean, it does come from both sides. There seems to be a bit of an atmosphere that's grown with a lot of people. They just seem to feel that I don't like what you're promoting. I don't agree with what you're doing. And we are going to make sure that you are just torn down from your pulpit, perhaps put out of your job. We might ruin your platform. We will do everything possible to make sure you don't have that ability to speak. And that entitlement that people feel that they can do that to others is just galling.
Yeah, the people that run businesses get singled out because they support a cause and try and cancel people out. I got a real serious echo. I don't know why, but sorry, I'm kind of
That's all right. You're coming in quite clearly with us. I understand what's happening when you got a headset in, and if you got sound on a front speaker, you'll kind of get it going in your own head, and it can make it difficult to talk. But if you kind of ignore your own voice and talk through, it'll kind of work there. It looks like you might have frozen up a little bit on us now, though, Tom. Okay, Tom's a bit frozen right now, so he is having some technical difficulties. But I'll kind of expand on what we had been talking about, and as we said, that there's a real problem with cancel culture. It's organized. It's really harming some people, and it's really dragging them down. I see movement again. Maybe Tom's back here.
Sorry. YouTube was running in the background, so I was literally listening to the show 5 minutes earlier and live, which pretty well was driving me nuts.
Okay.
So sorry about that.
No problem. So this is echoing. So I was just framing a little more on what's going on and how so badly some people are being damaged with acts of cancel culture and just some of that atmosphere that's going on and the need to finally push back rather than just keep falling victim to it.
Yeah, well, the thing that really helped me go public with this week was the New York Times, of all places, have changed, massive change in their editorial stance, where they have officially come out against cancel culture, and to the point where it's actually risking democracy. It's crushed free speech. It is fueling the anger that's down in the States, and that people think Canada's angry, and you've got the right and left fighting here. If you know how countries devolve into civil war, there are pockets in the States that are ready to, they're already armed up anyway, but they're ready to go. It's ugly, just completely ugly. And so the New York Times, who actually took part in cancel culture, encouraged it, fired their own editorial editor for running a column from Tom Cotton, which, he may hate his guts, who cares? Doesn't matter. The thing about op-ed pages, it used to be he said, she said, they said, we said. It was all about pushing your button, getting you thinking, writing letters to the editor, having civil dissent towards against each other. I mean, argue your points. And but the New York Times is blowing up in their face, and mainstream media is taking a pounding because they actually help fuel cancel culture. And now when you get something like the New York Times coming out and saying, this is our editorial stance, that we are going to fight cancel culture, and that includes going against Hollywood and all their supporters, it's a very good thing. And so I'm sitting there going, wow, this idea I've been planning and trying to, formalize, just got endorsed by the New York Times, of all places.
Well, yeah, and then for those who don't, follow American media that much, I mean, the New York Times is a very liberal publication, and that incident that happened. I mean, I'm the opinion editor here at the Western Standard. I check out those columns I choose, and they run. But I mean, I wouldn't be held responsible for what somebody else said on something I ran in here. I mean, if I ran somebody on employment on a inappropriate, Derek would take me aside and say, "Don't run that guy again." But I wouldn't be swarmed and fired for it. I mean, this was Cotton's point of view, not even the editor's point of view. And the mob, though, just was unrelenting. They came down and cost a man his career.
Right. And I'm kind of thinking they need to hire him back, pay him out a whole lot of money, and pay him. And why don't they put him in charge of their anti-woke cancel culture committee? Why don't they make him editor-in-chief? He knows what it's like to get fired for doing his job. When your job is to collect editorials, opinion pieces, op-ed, that's why they call it that. And you mix it out there and let people have a discussion, and you get fired for actually doing your job. It's like firing a chef for cooking you a steak.
Well, and it scares people from discourse. Like I said, if I got an op-ed, though I won't hold my breath on it happening. But if Rachel Notley sent me one, even if I didn't agree with her point of view and everything in it, of course, this is a person of importance. I would put that in there. And I know a lot of readers would be outraged in seeing her name on our print, but I don't think I don't think they'd be calling for my cancellation over it. And I know I wouldn't be canceled in that case. But that's what it's come to with publications. They become terrified of putting anything that might bring the mob on them. And that's bad for journalism all around.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It brings one voice only. I see radio programs. Daniel Smith is a guest on a podcast or a YouTube show. and people are canceling. I'm canceling my support for your Patreon support for the show. You just had a right lunatic on. Like, Danielle Campbell is, she's awesome. I mean, you know, she's pretty damn balanced. Yeah, she's conservative. Yeah, she's right wing. You know, no, she's not gonna, you know, be best friends with Notley, but Rachel Notley and the crew. But she'd sit down and have dinner with them. She wouldn't throw eggs at them and stuff. So it's so much discourse, you know, and so much hatred. And it's like, if you don't vote for the NDP, then you're hated. You know, before you used to be able to talk politics. Now it's like, forget it. And, you know, after these protests that we've had, and you know, I hear people say, oh, I'm triggered when I see a flag flying on a car. Are you kidding me? You know, like, I'm ashamed. I have to take my Canadian flag down because I'm ashamed. Like, get over yourself. Seriously.
And then we've seen this infecting a lot of news. You're an experienced journalist. You were in there for decades as well. You know, we have a number of people here. We're with the cancel culture in the newsrooms and things. It's actually sort of helped us at the Standard, but it's ruined people's careers. There was and I'm forgetting his name. It was a Substack piece that was written by a gentleman who was, I believe, at the Vancouver Sun. He was there for decades, and same sort of thing. He ran a column that they didn't agree with, and it was some new news reporter who was woke and lost it, and his editors, they threw him under the bus so fast. Decades of working there, and his career was ruined. It was just unbelievable what could be done. I mean, there's no more loyalty when the mob comes.
Yeah, and that's you know, I am going to push back against cancel culture and group mobs, and you know what? And am I worried about them coming after me? Bring it. You know, just you want to attack me? Just spell my name right. You know, I'm on Twitter at YEG Tom Braid. Used to be Sun Tom Braid, but when I left the Sun Media 6 years ago, I changed it. So I'm YEG Tom Braid, and I've been trying. It took me years to decompress from being a full-time journalist. I mean, I was 24/7. That's all I did for 40 years. I'm an extremely boring person. Met my wife 38 years ago. Been married 35 years. You know, been audited a couple times. As a matter of fact, they said we actually owe you more money because you took it too safe on your write-offs. So, like, never been charged with a criminal crime. Never been convicted of a criminal crime. Unlike Elizabeth May and the mayor of Vancouver, who have both been for protests, by the way. And then you get the mayor of Vancouver telling the protesters, come in, say what you want. No one cares what you have to say, and get lost. No one wants you here. Pretty rich from a guy that actually was charged and criminally convicted of protesting the pipeline into Port Moody.
So maybe we are hitting a turning point, though, a tipping point. As we said with the New York Times, like I think some of these liberal publications that took gleeful part in the cancel culture and the swarmings, the monster they created has turned on themselves, and they finally realized it. I mean, we have a more localized example with Ryan Jesperson, whose show is still down to this date because he tweaked his own audience, and he didn't realize that he was, you know, the mountain of cancelers he created eventually is going to turn around and bite you, and that's exactly what it did. But maybe with these incidents, we can finally start to get some reason into people and realize how destructive this trend is.
Yeah, well, I got back into it online last night. I mean, I jumped into the shallow end head first. Could have ended badly, but you know, people started I mean, there's all sorts of people. Speaking of triggered, there's this one person who identifies as Stacy with the hair on fire, saying that Ryan Jesperson has triggered her. You know, she's got serious mental issues, and it's pushing her to the edge, and people are like, oh my God, don't hurt yourself. Brian's such a bad guy. This is a no-name, no-face Twitter account demanding an apology because he said Stacy with her hair on fire. And she is I don't know, this person self-identified themselves as the Stacy with the hair on fire, which is not a person, and how they've been hurt and wronged. So they attached onto Sarah's situation where, you know, they definitely got into it on air. She is not completely innocent in what happened. She has to take responsibility too, but it's all Ryan is the worst thing since sliced bread. I mean, people have just been booting him while he's down. Last night, people started I wonder what Julie Rohr would do. I wonder what she would say. And now they're starting to put words in a dead woman's mouth.
I
Well,
saw that was repugnant to invoke that.
That triggered me because I love Julie Rohr, and I was her instructor, which is completely inappropriate to say that, but I was her photojournalism instructor. I was her job placement instructor. I helped her talents got her the job, but I was involved with helping her get her first full-time staff job in Sherwood Park News. People would remember her as Julie Rice, but her maiden name was Julie Rohr. She fell in love with photography, told me she was going to become, in her class, and our class only had 84 hours over 2 semesters. It's just a minor part. It was a writing course with a little sidebar of photography. She said, she just fell in love with photography. I'm going to become a wedding photographer, a family photographer. It's like, oh my God, I'm trying to teach you how to shoot car crashes and burning buildings and portraits, and now you're going to go off on a wedding thing. And she actually left the news business and did that. That's what she did. She's a very inspirational person. She was on Ryan Jesperson's editorial board. People that don't know Julie Rohr's story, she did get cancer, fought it, 2 young kids, horrible. She fought it head on, walked through the valley of the shadow of death. I mean, my God, she was completely inspirational. She was the founder of the editorial board with Ryan Jesperson. So now people, oh my God, what would she say? Thinking she's going to crap all over Ryan Jesperson. And I posted last night the words that I knew her, and I knew her enough that she would be really pissed off at how petty this has become. Because you know what? There are way bigger issues. I mean, how about fighting for your life? Leaving a legacy for your 2 kids, knowing you're going to die. Like Julie would have crushed these people. And, I know what it's like to deal with a lot worse things. I mean, I've worked as a journalist full time for 40 years. Took me years to decompress from all the dead people in my head. I've survived war zones. I'm coming up on my 30th anniversary of surviving an execution in Somalia. Like literally AK-47 in my forehead, click, click. AK-47s don't misfire, but we had just survived a gun battle, and I ended up in this emergency ward, people bleeding and dying all around me, and the guy got pissed off that I took pictures, and the next thing you know, I'm eating his AK-47, but he was out of bullets, I guess, luckily. So, that's 30 years of extra life. I mean, people want to come after me. I always tell them, I'm already dead. I died December 3rd, 1992. Every single day that I've been alive since then has been a bonus. I came back and really got involved in the community. Was awarded the Queen's Golden Jubilee Medal, fighting for a hospital in Edmonton that took care of severely disabled, medically fragile children, including my son, who passed away at 16 and a half years old. I go back to Julie Rohr. She would ask me, how do you keep going? How can you work in such a negative job in journalism with so much bad stuff? And you're teaching on the side, and you're working in the community, and you're raising money for buses. And, simple policy in my life is shit happens, and then it happens to you. No one's ever defined by what you do when something good happens. Win $100,000 scratch and win. Who cares? But humans are defined by what they do when something bad happens to them. You find out who you really are.
Well, and so now you've reached another phase in your life, and you want to make some positive change. So getting on to, we've established, we know cancel culture is a problem. We know it is something that's got to be addressed. We know that some institutions are finally coming up to face it. So how are you setting things up, and how can we push back? Like, how do we fight back against it?
I'm going to have different news feeds, case features, because, people don't have to hire me to protect them online, but there's case studies. Ryan Jesperson's an incredible case study, because it's actually the far left, the woke, whatever people call them, the snowflakes. I hate all these, Stacy with her hair on fire, Karen's. I hate all that stuff, using the names. But, it's an incredible case study, because Ryan has been involved with cancel culture. Mike Nichols, one down, one to go, right after he lost his mayor. The other one to go was Jason Kenney. I mean, really over the top hatred of Jason Kenney and the whole government. He wants UCP gone. So basically, he's a promoter for the NDP because it's the only other party that can win. the show is definitely left leaning, and they got all sorts of hot topics, and it's been quite entertaining and frustrating at times to watch as well. But his own woke mob literally turned on him, and they're still kicking him because he went on the air yesterday and said, okay, we're retooling. He didn't use the right word. Now people are crapping on him for that. I just go back to Julie Rohr real quickly. Sorry for getting extended, but within a half an hour, it was unbelievable. Julie's mother came out and endorsed my quote, my tweet, like, leave her the hell out of this. And she would be pissed off. And Julie's mother said, I believe in the sentiment of this, this tweet. And for what it's worth, Ryan, I want you back on the air. For what it's worth, that means a lot. And, people back the hell off, time out, leave her out of it. Like when you start reaching for, geez, I wonder what this dead person who used to be really close to Ryan would say. Would she pile on? That was the insinuation. No. And her mother agrees.
Yeah, well, and it shows some of, as I've described it before, when the mob really gets moving on somebody, and they really have, as you said, it's a great case study. I'm looking forward to you documenting it because we've got to show all these examples so people understand what's been happening.
Facts, brain grabs.
Yeah, they get so wound up that they feel entitled, and they set aside. I think, the person who brought her up might, if they were calm, realize this invoking and trying to speak with the voice of somebody who's passed away is in extreme poor taste, to say the very least. And you are not, nobody can do that when somebody is gone, no matter what you may think, and just don't go there. But they were swarming, they felt indignant, they felt entitled, and they didn't think twice before doing something as cruel as that.
Yeah, everybody feels untouchable because it's like the mob beatings. Once, you get to kick the guy, no one's going to do anything. It's like unbelievable. Ryan didn't help himself by staying silent for 6 days before saying, by the way, and he did it on Ryan Jesperson Twitter feed, not even his Real Talk, the show. And the last week, Ryan has blocked me. Sarah blocked me, and I'm out supporting Ryan to a point, but. He blocked me because I put a poll up. I also published his numbers on Twitter, on YouTube. The show was already in trouble. When they launched over a year ago, this is before Sarah started, by the way. These are facts. When he launched over a year ago, he had 6, 8, 10 plus thousand views on just YouTube. I'm not talking about all of his downloads on podcasts because it's impossible to find those numbers right now unless he releases them. He had numerous shows that had 25,000 hits on YouTube. Okay, a year later, March 1st, they had 1,100 views. You're getting 2,000. And then the rest of the month before this blew up, he was getting 2,000, 2,500, 1,800 views. That's a pretty big drop from 25,000. When you survive on clicks, when they rolled out the headlines and his Edify feature and stuff, number 4 in Canada. He beat Oprah. Number 4 in Canada for news entertainment. It's entertainment, news and entertainment. It's not he doesn't have a news show. He has an opinion show. And make that straight. That is not a news show. He doesn't have a newsroom like you do. You actually throw to news reporters. It's opinion, and that's fine. People, that. MSNBC, Rachel Maddow, Tucker Carlson. It's opinion. It's less news and more opinion.
Or of the feeling of, the more the merrier. If you don't like his content, I wasn't big on it, but just don't follow it. I don't want to see it canceled. I don't want to see it gone. It represents a segment of people who wanted to watch that. He interviews a lot of guests and goes into subjects that I certainly wouldn't. And likewise, I cover some areas that he just won't. The more stories, the more shows, the more, broadness we have in the social media world or just new media world, the better. And when, as much as I'm not a fan of Ryan, it's a loss when his show is gone. And these guys
absolutely
realize.
Absolutely. I can tell you right now that in the power war room of the NDP, the Alberta NDP, they are not happy. Nobody from the NDP has got involved, as far as I can see, with the pile on or defense. They don't want to defend him because there's too many angry women out there right now, and men that are pulling. He's lost sponsors. He's lost Patreon sponsors. He's paid financially, but I mean, Sarah is, this goes down. She's lost her own job on a live broadcast that there was a meltdown. Like an emotional, like very emotional. Live TV. They stopped. She stopped him dead and demanded for him to say what she wanted him to say. Can you imagine being, if Naylor right now cut in and told you what to say, and you don't even know what he's talking about? Like it was unprofessional. I mean, Ryan had 2 live guests. One of them, his editorial, one of the heads of his editorial board, and Tristan, high profile National Post author, writer, and they were live on deck. He was looking at them, and then all of a sudden he was stopped. Like, blah, he didn't know what to do. It stunned him, and unfortunately, they do all of their advertising live, or like you do. If they had pre-rolled advertising where he, was at the car dealership and talked about cars and had video clips, they could have cut away and said, "We'll be right back." They couldn't. It was just stunned silence, fumbling, and then he said, "Okay, yeah." I mean, Cody, the cowboy or whatever the hell the guy's name is, he said that that Sarah was racist. Stupid words, but she's not racist. But what do you call a woman who hates white males with beards that want to start a blog? What is that? That's something. It's not racist because she's white, he's white, but it's definitely something.
And not terribly tolerant. So we're kind of hitting the clock here, though. Yeah, lots to cover.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a Counselor of the Month award. Their case studies will be done. Their name, the same stuff they do, where they work, if they own a business. General public can soak it all in and do what they want, because the general public does that. Mike Tyson's got a famous quote, and it's everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And bullies. Sarah was being a bully, and this guy said, "You're racist," so he punched her in the face, not literally but figuratively. She got very emotional on air, and now they're off the air. And the pile on, before Sarah blocked me, I read a tweet from her where people said, "He apologized. Not fast enough. He's got to be held accountable." Like, you work there. The accountability is he goes off the air. Now you don't work. And when you work as a producer in the media business,
Well, I'm not
honest to God.
Sure, I know that. I mean, who wants a time bomb in their studio?
Well, the CBC, there's got to be a show there where you get a fired up, extremely left wing, vegan, electric car driving, woke person. Hey, there's an audience for that.
Yeah.
Ryan, when that argument first happened, Ryan was like, "This is awesome. This is he said, she said." There's been lots of good, TV shows, columns and stuff like that. But Ryan wasn't looking at it the way his supporters and the woke mob saw it. And now he's off the air. And I do hope it comes back. I don't know. It's going to come back damaged, but I hope it comes back, because the opposing voices are important. I mean, 6 months ago, if you told me I would be on your studio, in your brand new studio, on air, as you guys grow, and Ryan Jesperson would be dark and off the air, I would have called the best psychologist I could have found for you, because that is insane talk. And Ryan, when he started, number 4 on the podcast list. If you go to Apple Podcasts right now, he's not even on the top 100. So I don't know his listeners, the numbers. I can guess that YouTube, with his 2,000 to 2,500 daily listeners now, instead of 10 to 25,000, is a fair. I mean, you can't lie. YouTube is, the counts are there. So are the podcasts dropped as much? He's off the top 100. So hopefully he comes back, because there's an election coming up, and
We'll have a
quite
lot.
frankly, the NDP need him.
He'll have a lot to cover. Okay, before you go here, then quickly, a couple of commenters saying, where can we find you? And Dash saying we should insert the links in the chat box. We're getting better with those things and that. But
Yeah.
so that website again, because you got that case study to begin with, and we can keep.
Yeah, the website is it's dark right now, but it's active. But it says coming soon. So it's onlineprotectionservices.com.
Okay.
And .ca as well. But anyway, .com. On Twitter, I started an account. It's at Online Protection 99, because that's as many characters as they'd let me. I couldn't. So Online Protection 99. I am YEG Tom Braid. That's been active for a long time. That's Twitter account.
Well, thanks for the work and the initiative. I'm looking forward to it, and we will definitely follow it as you document and move and give us ways to push back against this odious trend that we've got going on. So thanks for making the time to come in to talk to me today, Tom, and I'll let you get on with enjoying the weekend.
Hey, thank you very much.
Right on. Thanks. So yeah, that was Tom Braid, again, a well-established journalist up in Edmonton, and again, really pushing back on that cancel culture, that trend. Something when I talked to Tom on the radio, like the entitlement, the lack of hesitation, this remorseless, almost sociopathic approach for some people when they feel entitled to rip somebody down because they disagree with something they did. An example of my own, a couple of years ago, I wore a branded shirt from a company, and I'd done a Facebook video where I was making fun of Trudeau. Hey, something new, right? And some liberal got so upset. She actually tracked down the company that was on my t-shirt and phoned them and demanded that I be fired. I didn't even work there. But it shows the mental fixations that people have. You felt entitled to try and reach out and wreck my life. You wanted to make me unemployed because you didn't like my political point of view. There is something terribly wrong with you. And as Tom brought up, somebody else got so worked up, thought it was okay to bring up the name of somebody who passed away and try to speak on their behalf. Like, who do you think you are? You can't do that. Don't you dare do that. But when people get into the mob, the pitchforks, the torches, they stop caring about anybody else anymore. They're just fixated on tearing down and destroying somebody else. Tom's analogy was right. When you see those horrible videos now and then of a swarming, when a group of people get together and start kicking somebody when they're down, and they all just feed off each other, and it gets worse and worse. And we're seeing that. And we see that. We've got a local recent example with Ryan Jesperson, and we see it all over the place with all sorts of other publications and people. So, it's going to be interesting seeing a way to Brad's saying it doesn't come up. He's just building it. It's a parked website. I'll be tweeting it and so on as Tom starts populating it and filling it, because it's a void, So he's actually looking at providing a service to protect companies and people from the mob, because it really is a damaging thing. So we've run things out, guys. We're up against the weekend, which is good. It's been a long week, and we got a lot more breaking. Be sure to watch. We're going to be live streaming from the Western Standard with Jason Kenney's press conference this afternoon. It's supposed to start at 3, so I would imagine 3:10, but you should probably get on early. You never know. He might be on time for a change. He's got a lot of things he's got to change if he wants to keep his darn job. So that's going to be breaking. We don't know what he's going to be saying today. I don't know. I threw one out there in the newsroom. Nobody believed me, and I'm probably still wrong. I think he's on the brink of resigning. But it wouldn't be the first time I was wrong. We'll see. It could be just more fluff and campaigning and trying to save his butt as this leadership review nightmare carries on. But that conference is going to be this afternoon. We'll be, of course, streaming it and covering it and writing on it live. Many, many other stories, as we saw. We got a great guy in Saskatchewan. On Monday, I'm going to be talking actually to our Ottawa columnist, David Craden, our senior parliamentary one. He's been writing a number of columns you can find online, of course, at the westernstandardonline.com. And I'll be talking to Charlie Pester from Points. It's quietly something else that's happened is the UCP government is back down on their plan to get rid of traffic court. They kind of scrapped it and shuffled it off to the side. Not saying a heck of a lot about that, but I'm going to talk to somebody who, his specialty is dealing with traffic courts and traffic tickets, and get that perspective on just what happened there and whether the government's going to try and come back after this again. So be sure to tune in Monday morning, guys, at 11:30 a.m. Thank you all for tuning in with me today, and we will see you then. Have a good weekend. Don't forget to turn on the lights for Earth Day.